So the first time I realized that mountains are my ideal landscape, I was 16, 17 years old. I was on this trip, a course in the Rockies, natural history sort of the Rockies. We were hiking up this dusty, rocky trail, someplace in Rocky Mountain National Park. I can't remember where, but you could feel the rocks under your feet and smell the pines and look out across this valley. And I just remember thinking, I don't think it gets any better than this. And that feeling of feeling like myself, of like feeling home, that's driven a lot of decisions in my life. And it was a large part of the reason that I got together with Sarah. So we were students in North Carolina. We would go up and rock climb in the mountains and, just generally be outside a lot. And I remember one day we were sitting on a log near this swimming hole that we liked on the Eno River. Not in the mountains, but nice. And saying, I'm so glad that you get this. You understand, how this drives me. And that was a large part of the reason we decided we'd move to Colorado after we graduated college. And we did. We moved to Denver. We went to the mountains like every weekend and did these great hikes, like up ridges with mountain goats popping out around the ridge looking at you. I mean, just the mountain side of things was fantastic. We got married in the mountains in this old 1920s, 30s mansion, great pines, the foothills looking out over Denver. And I mean, the mountains couldn't have been better. But professionally, we both were wanting a bit. I was working in a molecular biology lab and I enjoyed it. I was pretty good at it. But I wanted to do science outside. I wanted to be in the mountains and do science. So I applied for graduate programs in ecology and evolutionary biology. Sarah applied for programs in history, and we got into some, didn't get into others. They were all on the East Coast, and we had this tough decision to make. She got into a couple places that she wasn't very excited about in Boston. I got into one in Boston that I liked, but I got into Princeton. I really liked Princeton. And so for months, we're going back and forth about what do we do, where should we go? And we're just not making a decision. And I remember one morning after having this conversation for the umpteenth time, dropping her off at the train, we're in the car, and she says, well, I guess you should go to Princeton then. And then I do this shitty thing where I'm like, I guess I should. I know, it's a great way to make life decisions. Yeah. But we do. We move from the mountains to Central Jersey. I don't know if you guys have been to Central Jersey, but there's this road, Route 1, which is awful. It's crowded, it's 4 lanes, it's divided, and it's just big box stores. And if you drive long enough, it's like the old cartoons where the background's on a loop. It's like, oh, Bed Bath & Beyond, Best Buy. Bed Bath & Beyond, Best Buy. It's terrible. So that's where we land, in this crappy hotel. And then we, a couple days later, move into a crappy apartment, which I end up loving that crappy apartment. I go to school, and I'm reading Darwin and Wallace, and I'm meeting these amazing people. Shiva and Ilya work on zebras in Africa, and my friend Nathan works on African birds, and Cassandra worked on carnivore diseases and wild horses, and just like, these are my people. Like, it's great. And Sarah's going between Route 1 and our crappy apartment, trying to make it a little less crappy. She doesn't have a job. And I can't bring these worlds together. These amazing people I'm meeting, and my wife who's really not happy about this. I remember seeing her when I came home one day. It was about 5, 6 o'clock at night, so the light was fading, but too early to really turn the lights on in the house. And she's sitting in front of the computer and this blue light washing over her face. And she's been playing Candy Crush for like 3 hours. And she just looks miserable. And I feel terrible. So I'm really cheered when somehow she's found this opportunity to teach English in Spain. And for the first time in weeks, months, like she's animated, she's excited. And so I'm like, yes, do that. And so she does. She goes to Spain for about 6 months, and she's teaching English. She's hiking in the Pyrenees. She's having this great experience. And then she comes home. She flew into Boston. We're at her parents' house in New Hampshire, and you know when two people are just like vibing, and you know there are these little looks and smiles, and I don't know what the opposite of that is, but this was the opposite of that. It wasn't there, and we felt it. And she said that she wanted to go back to Spain. She had some opportunities there, and so she came down to Princeton to get some things out of the apartment. And I remember standing there on the lawn of the apartment with our dog, Kita, who Sarah had raised this dog from a puppy, loved this dog, but she needed to get out of there more than she cared about the dog. So she left the dog with me, and we're sitting there watching her taillights go away, and I just sit down on the curb, and I'm hugging the dog and just crying. And I think maybe I should go to the mountains, pick myself up, feel better. But my mountains were so wrapped up in Sarah that I just couldn't stomach the thought. And we had these framed photos around the apartment of us in the mountains, or just these mountain landscapes that we'd taken. And I called up Cassandra and I said, can you come over and help me take these down? And so took them down. My friends were fantastic, helped me out, and took me out to get my mind off things, to talk about it, whatever I needed. But this wasn't the only breakup I was going through at the time. I was also breaking up with my first dissertation project. It was about migration in birds. It wasn't very good. But it was okay. I had some ideas. I was thinking about how the immune system might differ between different populations. And so looked for an animal to do that in, found the song sparrow. It's really widespread, super common, awesome little bird. And came up with this idea of comparing populations. And one of the populations was going to be in Washington State, where we knew some people and we knew a site. And I started getting logistics together to go there. Getting my gear, getting plane tickets and everything. And so the day comes, I'm going to Washington State to study this bird. I'm on the plane, land in Seattle. I'm driving down to the site. It's dark. And I get there. There's a little cabin. Get my gear inside and go to sleep. Then I wake up the next morning and I look out this big window of this cabin. And it's actually not raining in Washington State. And I'm looking across this valley and a little mist, and these great big trees. And I realize I'm in the mountains again. And I knew where I was going intellectually, but I didn't feel it until then. And so I grab my gear. I'm going out and looking for sparrows. I'm just hiking these old logging trails. I see my first bear in the wild, and I think I got to share this with somebody. So I pull out my old flip phone, and I pause because I know exactly who I'm going to call. I know that there's one person that's going to understand this, and that is going to get this and be behind me and so happy for me. So I'm standing there smelling the cottonwoods, and I dial Cassandra's number. And she does, she gets it. She's so happy for me. And she also says, "When the hell are you coming home?" And I do. I come home in a couple weeks, get the work done. And it takes me and Cassie a little while to realize this, but this is the person that I'm going to spend the rest of my life with. And I have. Thank you.